Hey there, dirt bike people. I'm Chuck from TrueTech, and today I'm going to be diagnosing the engine failure on this brand new 2023 EN300 TBI. So this bike has 5.2 hours on it. It's seized on a light trail ride, and TM has authorized me to tear the engine down and do the rebuild. So I've already got the seat and tank off, and the reason for that is that I went and hooked this thing up to the computer. I downloaded the software, I got the diagnostic cable from the distributor, and I just wanted to make sure that there was no codes, that there wasn't anything in the electronics that had caused it to fail, like an oil pump or something. So I verified that both injectors are working, it's not throwing any codes, and that the oil pump is also working properly. I'm actually super excited to get this engine apart. I've never had a TM on my bench before this one. I'm actually not disappointed at all that this thing's seized. Apparently TM is aware of the issue and they are making the appropriate changes, so this should stop being an issue. So far, the distributor has been excellent to work with. That's the distributor up here in Canada. He hasn't always known the answers, and I don't have any issue with that, because what he's been doing is if he doesn't know the answer, he just says, I don't know, let me get back to you. And then he has either gotten in contact with the factory in Italy, or what he's also done is put me in touch with dealers that have been in the business for a long time and know more about the bikes than he does. So far, the communication has been awesome. It looks like there are a lot of parts in stock. I really don't think that this is much of a negative thing at all. As I've said in the past, we all know that KTM has had their issues. If you buy a popular Austrian bike, there is still obviously quite a chance that you will have an issue. And if you do have an issue, the support, who knows what you're gonna get. So far, I've been super impressed with the design and build quality of this bike, and I'm really excited to be able to take the engine out to really dig into how this thing is built. So let's do it right now. So between assembling this bike out of the box and pulling the engine out, I've already interacted with almost every fastener on the bike. Oh, sorry, hold up a sec. So as I was saying, it's clear that TM has used ideas from both the Japanese and the Austrian paradigms and has improved on them in quite a few areas. The fasteners on this bike are totally unique. On most dirt bikes, you can expect that an 8mm bolt is going to have a 10mm head, for example. But on the TM, you might see a larger bolt with a deliberately undersized head. I expect this has to do with weight savings, and initially I wondered if the smaller bolt heads would cause issues with the head stripping, but it doesn't seem like that's going to be an issue at all. The amount of room behind the engine is also very nice to have. Everything is easily accessible, which makes the engine removal really smooth. Overall, the engine took me something like 30 minutes to get out of the frame. That's on par with Japanese and Austrian two-strokes, but considering this is my first TM, I feel like it's a really intuitive bike to work on. There we have it, 1TM, sans engine. I wasn't sure how this power valve would come off of the head, and it would have been easier to get the engine out of the chassis if I'd taken it off earlier, but I'll keep that in mind for reassembly. The rest of the top end disassembly is super easy, just like any other two-stroke. And just as I suspected, nothing wrong up top, good crosshatch in the cylinder, no vertical scoring, which of course is exactly what I would expect for a bike with 5.2 hours on it. There was a little bit of scuffing on the piston right where it contacts the exhaust bridge. That's a really hot part of the engine, and there are holes drilled there for extra lubrication. It makes me think that maybe it could run a little bit richer. No surprise here either. The connecting rod looks like it's in great shape. No vertical play, smooth articulation. Nothing too exciting down here. It's nice to see that the water pump impeller is aluminum. With a bike that's this exotic and is so unique, I expected that in this cover I might find some things that were a little bit annoying, but everything just came apart really easily. Clutch was in great shape. No surprises. Kickstart is totally normal. Clutch dampers, like the Japanese stuff, probably super reliable. Other than that, it came apart really, really easy. Now, I'm about to start splitting the cases here. I don't mind splitting the cases from the left or the right, and on this one, I actually tried splitting it from the left first, but the left side crank bearing was so tight that I couldn't get it, and I had to do it from the right-hand side. Here you can see it's so tight that the bearing actually stayed on the crank when I pressed it out of the cases. All right, live carnage right here. It's all apart. Let's assess the damage. So this ball bearing destroyed. No wonder it's seized. Totally locked up. Now in here, lots of carnage. Typical stuff. What's interesting is that the right side one, no problem. No issue at all with that bearing. Now, what I've seen online, a bunch of guys have sent me stuff, is that that hole there is not big enough, or it is impeded partially by the bearing and doesn't allow enough oil or premix to reach that bearing. Now, I don't know if the theory is that the same is true on that side, but the right side has no issues. I know you guys can't see in there, but if I shine a flashlight in there just right, I can see, and it looks to me like there's plenty of space in there for fuel and oil to make their way into that bearing. Now, this is the first one of these engines that I've had apart, but if you put a gun to my head and told me to diagnose this, I got some pretty good ideas. What you don't see here that's interesting is heat. It's really common for crank bearings to turn blue due to heat, and sometimes that heat is caused by friction. But there's no bluing here. It is quite obvious what did fail, and that's the retainer. You can see that this retainer is just shredded. But if you ask me, this looks like a side load issue. Now, there could be a couple of factors contributing to that. So if this crank is just a little bit too big and the interference is a little bit too great between the crank and the bearing, then when the crank gets pulled into the bearing, there's going to be significant side load happening. When I build a bottom end, I do my best to heat the cases and the bearing appropriately so that there's no side load, so that everything just slides together and then sweats down. So I don't know what their order of operations is or how they put this crank into this bearing, but if you ask me, it looks like a side load issue. There are some guys in the States that have been putting NJ206 bearings. It's a roller bearing instead of a ball bearing. They've been putting that style bearing into these bikes, and apparently they're reporting hundreds and hundreds of hours of bearing life, which is good. The distributor has also informed me that TM already has a fix, and they're sending the new updated parts to me. They should be in the air, and I should be seeing them any day now. But either way, that is disassembly. Now I'm gonna get this stuff cleaned up. I'm sure you guys don't wanna watch that. If you wanna see more about what is going to happen with this TM or lots of other dirt bike content, go ahead and subscribe and hit the notification bell, like, comment, all that stuff. If you want to keep up with what I'm doing on a more day-to-day basis, go ahead and follow me on Instagram. And believe me, I am just as much looking forward to what happens with this thing as you are.